You need to ask yourself, are you taking 80,000 words to tell a 30,000 word story? Novels aren't about telling a longer story, they're about telling a bigger story. 66,537, 56,538, 50... Damn it, I lost count. So you're writing along, just at that magical moment where your Google Doc crosses the length threshold between novella and novel, as stipulated in the UN resolution governing the length of works of fiction. You've written something that's 80,000 words long, or 70,000 words, or 90,000 words, or whatever length will stop people from arguing about how many words a novel is. But have you given much thought to the length of your story? Or are you just writing towards the magic number that you have in your mind? Today, we're going to talk about the length of novels, the amount of time it takes to tell them, and about whether your writing is actually serving that length. This is something I've thought a lot about recently, and I've found it a great way to orient everything from your world building to character development to even how you write your prose. One of the fundamental elements of storytelling is delaying. Having time pass between establishing an idea in your reader's mind and bringing some kind of resolution to that idea. This is important whether you're writing a novel, a short story, flash fiction, or even just telling a joke. There's a reason that there's always a delay between me asking you what's high in the middle and round on both ends, and then me telling you that it's Ohio. If I deliver the punchline too quickly, it ruins the joke. This is comedic timing. The same principles that make comedic timing work also explain why novels are as long as they are. Any story is going to have an ideal amount of time to be told in. You can't just plunk a character and a conflict into your reader's mind and then immediately solve it. It takes time for ideas to take root, for the readers to pick up on subtle emotional cues, for them to see who the characters are by the actions that they take. Every story has an ideal length to be told in, an ideal delay between letting the reader know what the story's about and letting them know how it ends. The kind of story you tell in a flash fiction piece is very different from the kind of story you tell in a short story or in a novel. Different stories require different lengths of time to tell. There's also a certain marinating process that takes place with a novel. The time that a reader spends with an idea will change how they feel about that idea. Novels are interesting because they are generally read across multiple sittings, which gives the reader's mind time to process and reinterpret what is happening in the story. You'll see this with events in your real life as well. How often have you been mad or upset about something and then you sleep on it and wake up with a different perspective? If a day has passed between when somebody has read a chapter of a novel and when they come back to read the next one, that time is going to change how they think about it. They're going to have a different perspective. They might not be consciously thinking about the novel in that time span, but unconsciously they are probably thinking about it on some level. These elements all weave together. In a novel, you have a lot of space to get complexity across to the reader, and you also have the benefit of time for the reader to digest much of that complexity. The fact that the reader is going to put a novel down and go do something else is going to fundamentally change how they feel about that story, and it should affect how you write that novel. The length of a novel is not just about creating a longer work. It's a deliberate tactic that you can use to your advantage. These features brought about by a novel's length allow you to tell different stories than you can with short or flash fiction, which is generally read in one sitting. It's not just about creating intrigue and then delaying them for 50,000 words until you get to the climax at the end. That's not how you write a novel. That's a recipe for failure. Problems start to creep in when you don't use a novel's length to your advantage. Novels aren't about telling a longer story, they're about telling a bigger story. You need to ask yourself, are you taking 80,000 words to tell a 30,000 word story? Or are you trying to cram a 150,000 word story into 80,000 words? Both situations will create problems. The former because you're drawing out a story way longer than it needs to be, and the latter because you're not giving the story proper room to breathe. You're going to be rushing to get it all in the length that you've given yourself. This is the tail wagging the dog. It's you fighting against the length of the medium rather than using it to your advantage. A story that is too short to be a novel is going to be bloated. There will be unnecessary scenes, dialogue exchanges that go on for way too long, scenes that start early and end way too late. If you feel you have room in your novel for anything meaningless, or you feel you need to pad it in some way, then you don't have a novel-length story. Every moment of your story needs to be a deliberate move towards plot progress or exposition or characterization or relaying theme or setting the mood. If you pull out a single line in your novel and it doesn't do any of those things, then you have to ask, why is it in there in the first place? You shouldn't describe the color of your protagonist's eyes unless it benefits the story in some way, unless removing it will hurt the novel. Everything you pull the reader's attention to should be important, should have some kind of meaning. Now, the response to this is going to be, well, the reader needs to know what my character looks like. And my response to that is, why have you designed the physical appearance of your protagonist in a way that doesn't serve the story? Why do they have any physical feature that doesn't help you get your message across? The reader should be so engaged by the meaningful details that you're giving them that anything you don't describe, anything that isn't actually important, they will forget about and they won't care about because you've given them a bunch of stuff to care about. I think writers sometimes forget how much control they have over their own stories. You control every aspect of it, and every aspect needs to serve the story in some way. You have control over how scenes are set, when we enter, when we leave, what the characters look at, what they smell like, what they notice. If the characters walking from one room to another room doesn't do anything to characterize or move the plot or do anything except move them from point A to point B, you have the power to change how those scenes are set up. You can change those scenes to the point where you don't need to show any of that useless information. All of this needs to be contrived in a way to serve your story. Anything that doesn't is going to be dead weight. It's like if you were playing chess and you're like, okay, every fifth move, I'm just going to do something random that doesn't actually serve my overall strategy. You're given a certain amount of opportunities to achieve your goal, and you're just arbitrarily throwing some of them away. You have 80 or 100 or however many thousand words to tell your novel's story. Why would you waste any of them? You can apply this idea to multiple points within the writing process. A major part of line editing is getting rid of unnecessary words. Sentences can often be shifted around to cut a few words from them, and tightening up writing this way is often a great help in improving the flow of your prose. Having scene and chapter level structure is a big help as well. If there's always a goal, a sort of mini arc within a chapter, and that arc is somehow related to the main plot, then it's a good sign that you've written a meaningful scene and you're not just having the characters kill time until the ending. This is also why I'm not a huge fan of these exercises where you do a lot of world building or you create these character dossiers before you start writing, where you fill in all these details about your characters, things like that. What can happen here is you create a lot of details that you then feel obligated to shove into the novel. Setting and character information should serve the story, not just be interesting. These are details that you need to get across, not just ones that you want to get across. Now, don't take this as a discouragement against doing character sheets or world building or even outlining in general before you start writing. I think if you like to do those things, you should do them. But you should always be focused on, how does this relate to the story? How do these details serve the story? What details do I need? Overall, I think looking at your novel in this way gives you a really clear path of what should stay and what should go. There's bigger, harder to figure out questions here of what exactly do you want to tell in your story, but eliminating anything that obviously doesn't fit, anything that obviously doesn't have a purpose is a good starting point. Just like this is a good ending point for this video. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. I hope I didn't say anything that wasn't useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.